The Mask We Wear, Part 1. How we became strangers to ourselves. Welcome to my therapist, a space for truth and clarity. Stay tuned because the homework at the end could change everything. Have you ever walked into a room, smiled, laughed, said all the right things, only to leave feeling like you were never really there? That's not just social exhaustion. That's the ache of wearing a mask. And the strange part is, most people don't even know they're wearing one. Because they've worn it for so long, it feels like them. But underneath, there's a different voice, a quieter one, the one that wonders, if they really knew me, would they still stay? Our first mask is almost never chosen. It's built, piece by piece, out of moments where we weren't accepted as we were. A parent's scolding, a classroom humiliation, a breakup that made you decide never again. Each time we're told we're too much, not enough, wrong, or unlovable, we adjust. We smile when we want to scream. We become agreeable when we want to protest. We study people's reactions like maps, hoping to never get lost again. And then one day, we forget who we were without the map. Carl Jung called this mask the persona, a necessary costume we wear to exist in society. But when the persona becomes our identity, our true self gets exiled into the unconscious. That exile? That's the birth of the shadow. And the longer we ignore the shadow, the louder the mask becomes. It starts thinking for us, speaking for us, even dreaming for us. And yet, it can never feel for us. That's the curse. We keep performing connection while secretly starving for it. Aleister Crowley said, "Every man and every woman is a star." But how many of us live like satellites, orbiting other people's expectations? The mask was never built to shine. It was built to protect. But what protects you from pain also blocks you from intimacy. And here's the twist. You can't heal what you won't let be seen. The way of mastery teaches that all things asked in fear create more fear, and all things asked in love return us to wholeness. But the mask doesn't ask with love. It demands with fear. Fear of judgment, fear of abandonment, fear of not being enough, or worse, being too much. Neville Goddard taught that imagination creates reality. So what happens when you imagine a self that isn't even you? You start creating a life that feels like someone else's. Success without satisfaction. Love without safety. Friends who know the mask, but not the soul behind it. And the scariest part? Most people would rather die as someone they're not than risk living as who they really are. But what if the pain you've been carrying isn't yours? What if the guilt, the shame, the overthinking is just residue from pretending? There's a moment, maybe it's this one, where the mask starts to feel heavy, where you realize you've been performing instead of living, where you're exhausted by the need to seem okay. And in that moment, something sacred can happen. You can decide to come home, not to the person people expect you to be, but to the one who was there before the mask ever formed. That's not a self-improvement project. That's a resurrection. Strategic CTA, placed at emotional peak. If you felt the weight of that mask while listening, if part of you whispered, "That's me," subscribe to my therapist. We don't fix masks here. We take them off. And in the comments, tell me, the first time I wore the mask was when Mozart. No judgment, no shame, just truth. Because that's where real healing begins. The Mask We Wear. Part 2. The mirror cracks. There comes a moment, It might be small, like someone asking how you're doing and you almost answer honestly. Or maybe it's bigger. A breakup, a breakdown, a moment when life grabs you by the collar and whispers, "I don't believe you anymore." That's when the mirror cracks, not the one on your bathroom wall, the one you've been holding up to the world your whole life, the one that reflects what you want them to see. Confident, funny, put together, strong, until suddenly, it doesn't work. You forget the line you usually say. You snap at someone out of nowhere. You cry at something stupid, a song, an ad, a stranger's kindness. And just like that, the performance starts glitching. You tell yourself it's just stress, just a bad week. But deep down, something knows. The mask is slipping. And maybe, just maybe, that's a good thing. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But first, you have to face who you pretended to be. And that's terrifying, because the mask wasn't just protection. It became your currency. You built friendships on it. You built love on it. You built yourself on it. And now the foundation feels like sand. So when it starts to crumble, panic sets in. Who am I without this? This is where most people run. Back to the mask. Back to control. Back to the curated version of self. Back to smiling when it hurts. But if you don't run, if you pause, you'll notice something strange. That pain you're feeling? That confusion? That disorientation? It's not destruction. It's the sound of a false identity collapsing. And beneath the rubble is something ancient, raw and real. Buddha taught that suffering comes from attachment, especially to illusion. And the persona you've been protecting, that's the grand illusion. The way of mastery says that all things that shake us are gifts of grace, not punishments, but awakenings. But awakenings are messy. You don't sit on a mountain in peace. You scream in your car. You feel like a fraud. You mourn the person you thought you were. You grieve the attention the mask used to earn. And then something sacred happens. You breathe, and nothing falls apart. The world didn't end. The real you survived being seen. And in that tiny gap of silence, you begin. You may start noticing things differently now, that the people who loved your mask don't feel quite safe, that the habits you once called just how I am now feel like cages. You might start laughing at things that used to irritate you. You might cry and not need a reason. You might stop explaining yourself and feel powerful in the silence. You're not breaking down. You're breaking through. Aleister Crowley said, "Love is the law. Love under will. And to love yourself under all that collapsing is not weakness. It's willpower. You're reclaiming the energy you've spent trying to be likable, trying to fit, trying to earn space. And suddenly, you don't need to try so hard. Because when the mask fails, your soul gets louder. Neville Goddard taught that imagination shapes reality. So now, you get to imagine differently. You don't have to keep picturing the polished version of you. You get to start picturing the honest one. And something beautiful happens. You begin attracting people who don't want your performance. They want your presence, not your mask, your heart. You won't lose yourself when the mirror cracks. You'll find the one who never needed to perform in the first place. So if your voice is shaking, let it shake. If your truth is messy, speak it anyway. If the mask is slipping, let it fall. You don't need it anymore. If you're still here, something in you knows. You've felt the weight of pretending. You're ready to look in the mirror and not flinch. So stay tuned, Because this journey isn't about being perfect. It's about being real. And if you're ready to take the next step, subscribe to my therapist. Because this is where we stop performing and start becoming. The mask we wear. Part 3. The shadow revealed what the mask was hiding. There comes a moment when the mirror reflects not a polished image, but the raw, unadorned truth, a shadow that has lurked behind the mask for years. This is that moment, a moment when you realize that everything you've built to protect yourself has also confined you. For years you learned to hide in the noise of your own thoughts. You perfected a smile, rehearsed responses, and created an image that you believed the world could love. But behind every carefully crafted persona lies a shadow, a piece of you that has been silenced out of fear. And that shadow holds all the truth you've been too scared to face. Carl Jung once said, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people." Yet most of us have never taken the time to look at our own darkness. Instead, we let the mask do the talking, while our inner self, our true self, remains buried in silence. Aleister Crowley taught that our will must be unshackled from our conditioning. Yet here we are, allowing old wounds to dictate our every move. Neville Goddard reminds us that imagination creates reality. But if our in, let me introduce you to Leo, a person much like many of us. Leo was always the one who handled it, who never let others see his real feelings. He wore his mask well, laughing at parties, nodding politely at meetings, and always coming off as the picture of competence. But inside, Leo's world was a storm of doubts and suppressed grief. Every time he overthought a simple social interaction or agonized over a misinterpreted text message. It wasn't about logic. It was about the shadow of his unspoken pain. One evening, after a long day of pretending, Leo found himself alone with a bottle of water and a mirror. For the first time, he looked deeply into his own eyes without the distraction of his daily performance. He saw the exhaustion, the weariness, and something else, a glimmer of vulnerability he had long denied. In that moment, the carefully constructed mask began to crumble, revealing the raw, aching truth underneath. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't perfect, it was real, and it was enough. This is the secret that the mask has always kept hidden. The more you invest in maintaining the illusion of control and perfection, the more disconnected you become from the parts of you that truly feel, that truly live. The mask is a defense mechanism, built long ago to protect a wounded child. But as you grow, holding on to it isn't strength, it's a prison. Think about it. How many times have you avoided silence because it meant facing your own pain? How many moments have you filled with endless analysis instead of simply feeling? The mind, in its endless chatter, drowns out the voice of the heart. And so, like Leo, you might laugh on the outside while a quiet storm rages within. Buddha taught that suffering comes from attachment, especially attachment to illusions of the self. The mask is one such illusion. When you cling to it, you miss the chance to experience genuine freedom. True liberation comes not from perfect thinking, but from daring to feel, from stepping into the unknown vulnerability of your own truth. Now let's be brutally honest. The moment you see the shadow within, you might feel exposed. You might shudder at the thought of dismantling the very part that has defined your interactions for so long. But remember, the shadow is not your enemy. It's the untouched part of your soul, waiting to be embraced. When you finally stop denying that shadow, you begin the long journey of integration. And integration, brother, is where true transformation happens. Imagine Leo again. After that evening's confrontation with his own reflection, he slowly started to change. He learned to pause before overthinking. He learned that a moment of silence was not a void to be feared, but a space where healing could begin. He even started to share bits of his truth with a close friend, who, in turn, opened up about their own hidden struggles. In that moment, Leo found that his shadow was not a burden, but a gateway to the kind of connection that makes life worth living. So here's the challenge for you. Look at your own mirror. What has your mask been hiding? What truths lie in the silence behind your thoughts? And what would it mean to live without that constant need for self-sabotaging perfection? This isn't about tearing yourself apart. It's about uniting the scattered parts of you into something whole. It's about daring to be vulnerable, even if it hurts, in order to heal. When the mask finally falls away, you'll discover that the freedom you crave isn't found in constant control, but in the surrender to your own imperfect truth. That's the beauty of the shadow. It invites you to reclaim what you once were before the world told you to hide. If you're feeling even a fraction of what these words are whispering to you, know that you're on the brink. The Mask We Wear, Part 4. Let's get honest. Most people don't heal because they don't know how to live without the mask. They don't even know who they'd be without the performance. Because when you've spent a lifetime adjusting, people-pleasing becomes your personality. Silence becomes your comfort zone. Smiling becomes your survival strategy. So when the mask begins to crack, it's not just emotional, it's existential. You don't just lose a pattern, you lose an identity. But let me tell you something. That's not a breakdown. It's a breakthrough. It's the death of a false self. The death that must happen before anything true can be born. Here's what people get wrong. They think the unmasking has to be loud, a dramatic reveal, a tell everyone off and burn the bridge moment. But truth is quieter than that. It doesn't scream. It just stops nodding. It stops apologizing for existing. It says no without explaining. It says, "This is me," and means it. The revolution isn't in the noise, it's in the breath. So how do we start? Let's get practical. Homework number 1. Pattern interruption. Every time you feel yourself slipping into performance, take a sacred pause. Right before you respond to a text you don't want to answer. Right before you offer to help out of guilt. Right before you laugh at something that isn't funny. Pause. Ask, is this my truth or my training? Then choose, even if it's awkward, even if your voice shakes. One honest response a day will shift your nervous system faster than any affirmation ever will. Homework number 2. Mirror ritual. Pick one day this week. Set a timer. 5 minutes. Sit with yourself in the mirror. No music, no distractions, no filters. Look into your own eyes. Not the mask, not the version you show others, but the one who's tired of hiding. And ask, what do I wish someone would give me permission to say? Then say it, out loud, to yourself. Whisper it like a prayer, or shout it if you need to. This is how we practice being seen, by seeing ourselves first. Homework number 3. Emotional inventory. Tonight, before bed, take out a notebook. List 3 moments from your day where you felt yourself perform. Maybe you said yes when you wanted no. Maybe you smiled while shrinking. Maybe you gave advice just to feel needed. Then, without judgment, write what your truth would have been. This is the work of deprogramming, because until you know where the mask shows up, you'll keep calling it personality. But not everything you are is who you were born to be. Some of it is who you became to survive. The Way of Mastery says, what you resist persists. What you bless transforms. So bless your guilt. Bless your awkward honesty. Bless the moment you set the boundary and felt like a monster. That's not regression. That's recalibration. And Jung would say, until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will rule your life, and you will call it fate. This is how you make the unconscious conscious, by noticing the lie and choosing not to repeat it. You don't have to change your whole life today. You just have to stop abandoning yourself in small ways. Because when you stop abandoning yourself, the world has no choice but to meet the real you, or leave. And either outcome is liberation. Now ask yourself, what mask do I still wear to avoid conflict? Where am I performing so others don't leave? What would my day look like if I lived it like I was already enough? You don't need to fix everything at once. You just need to start being honest with the only person who's been with you through it all. You. Part 5. Removing the mask. How to reclaim the self you lost. There comes a moment in every awakening when you stop asking, who do they want me to be? And start asking, who was I before I learned to hide? It's subtle at first, like the faint memory of a song you used to love, but forgot how to sing. And then it hits you. You've spent years becoming someone you're not, chasing approval, polishing your image, shrinking your truth, all to avoid the one thing you feared most, being rejected for being real. But now there's a deeper ache, a spiritual hunger, not just to be liked, but to be whole, to look in the mirror without flinching, to stand in a room and not perform, to finally stop editing your existence and say, this is me. Brother, sister, this is the moment we stop pretending, because the mask is heavy, and underneath it, there's someone aching to be free. Let's name it clearly. The mask was never the problem. It was a brilliant solution at one point, a child's sacred survival strategy. But what protected you back then is imprisoning you now. So how do you take it off? Not by force, not by tearing it apart, but by remembering the you who never needed it. Because beneath the mask isn't just pain, it's your essence, your voice, your sacred weirdness, your divine soul. And to reclaim it, you don't need to become something new. You need to unlearn everything that told you you weren't enough. Let me show you how. Step 1. Radical self-honesty. Stop pretending, not just to others, but to yourself. Name the roles you play, the ways you hide, the people you perform for. Ask, where am I still managing perception? What parts of myself do I silence to stay liked? If I dropped the act, what would I say, feel, or do? Write it down. Let it be ugly. Let it be real. Truth is messy before it's liberating. Step 2. Practice revealing yourself. Start small. Speak the scary truth in safe places. Say no when you mean no. Cry in front of someone you trust. Admit when you're afraid. Reveal something unpolished, unfiltered, unflattering. The goal isn't to be dramatic, it's to be honest. Because healing doesn't happen where you're hidden. It happens where you're seen. Step 3. Reparent the inner exile. That version of you you've locked away, the one who felt too sensitive, too intense, Too weird? Go find them. Sit with them. Tell them you're allowed now. Bring them home. This is the soul retrieval your life has been craving. You don't need to slay the ego. You need to heal the exile. Step 4. Choose truth over comfort. Every time you remove the mask, there will be fear. But every time you don't, there's a cost. The comfort of pretending comes with a hidden price. You lose yourself. So choose truth, even when it shakes you, even when people don't get it, even when you walk alone for a while, because your soul is worth it. Here's what no one tells you. When you remove the mask, you don't become someone new. You return to someone ancient, someone sacred, someone who never needed to be anything other than who you already are. This is what liberation feels like. Not the absence of fear, but the presence of self. No more contorting to fit in. No more performing for scraps of love. No more abandoning your truth to keep the peace. You are not here to be accepted. You are here to be free. So take a breath and drop it. The act, the mask, the pressure. You were never too much. You were never not enough. You were always just waiting for your own permission to be real. If this series cracked something open for you, leave a comment below. Tell us, what mask have you been wearing? And who are you underneath it? And if you made it to the end, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned. Because here on My Therapist, we don't just talk about healing. We do it together.